All righty then. Here we go. To discuss medical cannabis as a pharmaceutical market, to lead this discussion, we have the General Secretary of the EU MCA. You've been to, how many of these have you been to? How many of these have you been to? This is your fourth, fifth? You've been to all of them?
Yeah, all of them.
She's been to all of them. All of them. And it's always an honor and a pleasure to lead this discussion. Let's hear it for Sita Schubert. Please take your discussions to the hallway. I'm looking at you guys in the stairway. Take your discussions to the hallway. Hello. Hello. Thank you. Ciao. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So thank you for all those who stay and do not leave. I think we have something to say, and I'm really delighted that you're interested as well. And I'm very, very happy to have this wonderful panel here. We know that a lot of companies coming from outside of other countries sometimes are surprised to find themselves in the pharmaceutical market, while I would say I congratulate you to be part of it. And I'm very happy to exchange on that together with this amazing panel. And I just go by alphabetical order to introduce you. First I have Mrs. Hannah Bellman, who is a very, very successful young woman with an experience in the US market, coming here to Germany, being German by herself. And she had stationed, she was gained experience at Fagron, also a cannabis company in the transformation. Then you went to Cansativa. I don't think anybody needs to be introduced to Cansativa. And now you are in a pharmaceutical company, Medios, a very, very impressive company here as a pharmaceutical leader. And we very welcome you here on the panel. Thank you for being here. We have Timo Bongartz, who is also already several times here at the panels at ICBC. I think everybody knows him, but I'm delighted to introduce him in his executive with over 15 years experience in horticulture, pharma and medical cannabis market. You are now the managing director of the König Group, and you are delivering GMP compliant solutions including decontamination, precision, and also GMP, correct? Then we have Christine Neubauer. I'm sure you also met her at several kind of occasions at Expo Farm. She is a pharmacist by profession, and she is the managing director of the Cannabis Supplying Pharmacists Association. She was asked to go there after managing an own pharmacy, and we are very delighted to hear your view on many things. And of course, as one of the pharma representatives, we have Thomas Porstner, who is the head and managing director of the General Wholesale Association, which is also part of the European Wholesale Association, the big distributors to pharmacies. And also he has a big role from Generica, from being in the Pharmaceutical Association as head of legal, and I'm delighted to exchange on the topic. And I would just start maybe, Thomas, with you about the situation. I think we have in the program, it is about how the situation is in the pharmaceutical market, how the integration is. But if we talk about like stakeholders in the pharmaceutical industry, the lawyer starts always with a definition, what is the stakeholder you would talk about? So Thomas, what would be your stakeholder in the wholesale business for cannabis here in Germany?
Thank you, Sita. Thanks for having me. So first of all, congratulations to this great conference. It's amazing. It's a huge impression I got from you, participants, members, the panels here. It's really amazing. Thank you. So if you talk about stakeholders of the cannabis sector, and first, I think I heard the panels before, I used to distinguish between regulators and policymakers. For the wholesale sector, on the first hand, regulators, so the authorities are the main partner, because we need on the operative side regulators to translate what policies are about And so that's why we have a very strong contact to the main authority here at BfArM in Germany, and even in other countries in Europe, and even to the local authorities. We need a operative contact to know what's about the policies. And this is the second part, the policymakers. Even if it's difficult, as we heard before in the panel, to get in contact with politicians, with policymakers, there are different views. This is so crucial to be in good contact, tight contact, even to no one is really easy. And you don't need the people who agree with you. You need the people who are criticizing you and asking the severe questions. And that's why you're getting more impressions and agreements of them if you are ready to communicate and to give your opinion to them and to discuss. Third part are importers, manufacturers, suppliers. For sure, for our wholesale level, this is the most important, after our customers, the most important part to be in line with, because we need to see which assortment is offered, which agreements are made with suppliers. So we need reliable connections to importers and manufacturers. Because on the wholesale side, we are always so-called in a sandwich position between suppliers, manufacturers, and our customers, most important, customers with their demand and demand of patients. So in this position, we have a crucial role, not just for assuring quality of supply, transport, and storage, but quality of communication between suppliers and customers, as pharmacists are. And this is the most crucial part, our customers, the specialized pharmacists and pharmacies. So we need to transfer and communicate to them very tightly, because they are the ones who are on the demanding patient side and saying and have to rely on a stable supply chain.
Thank you very much. So we see at the end your main customers are the pharmacists, of course, as a wholesaler, and your, of course, suppliers on the other side. So Hannah, you as representing here the pharmaceutical companies, so what are your stakeholders which are important for you?
Yeah, I hope actually that for all of us we have the same key stakeholders on our mind, otherwise we would have a problem. But I think Thomas already wrapped it up really, really great. I think in order to make cannabis a standard and not just an exception in the pharmaceutical world, we have 6 key stakeholders, more or less.
Yeah.
First of all, pharmacies, gatekeepers along the way, doctors. Biggest challenge, to be honest, to all doctors out here, because it's not part of the education, more or less. Investment is needed to just, that we're all on the same loop. Patients, of course. Payers, talking about all the health insurance companies. Authorities, because it's a very political topic. And last but not least, what we are dealing with, the wholesalers, because they are the ones more or less, transferring it from A to B, and also being the bridge to all involved parties.
Excellent. So, thank you, because I think, I don't know if it's known that in Germany the pharmacist is delivered 3 times a day from the wholesaler. So anything when a patient approaches a pharmacy where maybe the product is not available, they can organize it during the next 2 hours. And I think this is really the unbelievable, sensational logistic performance of the wholesaler to cover Germany in a way that the pharmacy can be reached by 2 or 3 wholesalers in 2 hours. So, which is very convenient for patients. Timo, what is your stakeholder? Maybe one which is not yet mentioned, so just add to the list, or which is for you the most important one?
Yeah, from a customer point of view, for us, GMP companies and wholesalers are our customers, so our main stakeholder. But I think we are a little bit in between from cultivation and then downstream to dispensing. But we are clearly seeing how important it is to connect the whole value chain, so all stakeholders behind each other, so that it's workable then also to the end to the pharmacies. So I think, seeing all these stakeholders at the end they all have a role within the value chain, and the most important thing, at least for us, is to see how these different tiers are working with each other seamlessly, and to at the end create the transparency for the patients.
Excellent, thank you. And Christine, what would be your most important stakeholder in the cannabis industry business here?
Yes, before I answer, unfortunately my English is not that good. I studied Latin and ancient Greek at school, and therefore I need my cheat sheets, so excuse that. And now to your answer. For pharmacies, physicians and patient organizations are our key stakeholders. And we engaged directly with the doctors, and I regularly attend medical cannabis congresses where I met physicians who already prescribe cannabis or considering that. And for us, a close collaboration and open exchange with the medical community are essential. And we are also in contact with the patient. At first hand, the pharmacies, they have the first-hand information about the problems that arise in the daily care. And at least also we stand in dialogue with the politicians, and so we draft statements on legislation, and we engage in dialogue with the
excellent
politicians.
I think the importance, of course, in the pharmaceutical market, I know that a lot of things is about decision maker. Who is at the end deciding what kind of product is this arriving at the patient? And I think we all know that in the standard pharmaceutical market, it is the doctor to decide that. Of course, the product needs to be available from the supplier. Hannah, the situation and you mentioned it, one of the most important stakeholders to decide on a pharmaceutical treatment and now also to decide on the medicinal cannabis approach is the doctor. We all know that the knowledge on medicinal cannabis is of course not broad. It's not part of the schedule of the studies. It's at the end, a few years ago, it was not even considered. What do you think could be a way to reach them, and how things can be moved in a direction that more and more of this important stakeholder group would be available to engage in cannabis treatment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think two answers. So first of all, I think we have to understand that we are not here to push things, we're here to enable every one of the stakeholders, especially doctors. So with that mindset of enablement, we have to make our homework more or less and meet them in their system. That's usually how I put it. Right? So we have to understand how a doctor operates, we have to understand what they need, what are the roadblockers, and it is very time consuming. Right? Prescribing cannabis is not only, I think, a problem of missing knowledge, know-how, it's also time consuming. So I think, investment in education, that's the first place. And I think this is actually doing the job, because the moment when a doctor understands that it is part of a patient protocol and it's not that complicated to make it part of it, and that he is also a little bit more aware of all the indications, there is no reason why a doctor would not prescribe cannabis. So I think, that might not be the most satisfying answer, but I think we have to start somewhere, and we have to integrate it into the system somehow.
Thank you. The situation is, of course, now that talking with Thomas, but also with you in the pharmacy, is, of course, the situation where we have now a big variety of flowers. And how do you think a doctor is enabled to make the right selection for the patient? What do you see as a problem?
It's so difficult to handle it. It's also difficult for the pharmacies and the doctors because we don't need so much strength. We have about 1,000 different flowers on the market, and nobody need it.
And nobody knows, I think,
Yes,
how to use it.
It's really difficult, and to treat with cannabis, it's all a research and try and error research for the patient and the doctors.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Timo, do you have a solution for this kind of challenge of knowledge and transfer of knowledge, of communication? Doctors who are used to a specific kind of communication, do you think they are well served at present?
Unfortunately, I don't have the solution for that, but I think if we look back how long it took us as a society, civilization to destigmatize cannabis and allowing cannabis to be a medicine. What we need now is, next to money for sure, time. We need time. We lost decades of missing research, and that is, of course, something we as an industry need to deal with.
Yeah.
It's a consequence of, prohibition. And sometimes it feels like we operate a flying plane, repairing the landing gear and the flaps and whatnot while we are flying. So, and it goes back not only for the doctors to have the evidence and clinical data and so on to properly prescribe it, but Christiane just said it, we have so many flowers. Now, if I compare it, in the intro you said I have background in horticulture. If I compare it to classical horticulture, because at the end we are growing in controlled environments plants, right? That is a common thing. If you go in a cucumber greenhouse or a tomato greenhouse, whatnot, you have stabilized genetics. It's 20 hectares of Malese tomato. No variants. It's a really stable. That is not the case for cannabis. We need time to further stabilize and work on that. So at the end, I don't have the solution, but what we need is certainty from the regulators, policymakers, that we can continue, because no one invests if it's uncertain, if you don't have a return on investment. So at the end, also doctors, everyone needs is certainty that it's here to stay, that investments can be made, that companies can invest because they have a possibility of a return on investment. Otherwise, it will not happen. So I think as an industry, for us, it's the most important thing to have stability around regulations and keep on going, not after 1 year debating about everything again. Just keep on going, give it enough time to have enough evidence to really review, and not, we see it after 1 year, actually good results, and again, it's like seen very... And everyone is getting nervous again, and that doesn't help.
Yeah. Of course, the infrastructure situation is, as we say, everything is most secure in life is that changes happen. And of course, we are experiencing the changes through the last year. We had a very open presence, but it was this uncertainty, nobody knows how to deal it. We are now getting more in a stabilized situation, but meanwhile, of course, more and more competition grows. And talking to doctors and decision makers on a therapy, what I found is, I know that one client once called me and said, doctor, whoever does not prescribe. And I said, okay, I call him. And I called the doctor and said, why don't you prescribe? And one of the answers was, never ever I was visited. I was never explained the benefit of the flower. I never understood how to deal it, for what kind of indication I may use it, what kind of patient is benefiting. So why would I prescribe? I know, Thomas, that you are also with your members giving training sessions here in that way of pharmacists. And doctors is again another part where I think companies are very much engaged in Germany meanwhile. But I know that you, for example, offer pharmacist training. And I know that the pharmacists are attending this kind of webinars of 2 hours from 7 to 9 o'clock in the evening, 300 pharmacists listening to the situation. So so here you are doing, I think, something very right, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you, Sita. But to be honest, these are just still too few educations.
Okay.
Because we have to rely on the education on wholesalers, because we need experienced wholesalers. And what wholesale experience was that a usual come-along wholesaler isn't the right one to deal with the strains, with the varieties, with the quality. All these questions go beyond GMP and GDP. Yeah, so you have to build up specialized knowledge, and even our customers have to. And that's why we need this connected communication between pharmacists and wholesalers to be assuring the supply chain challenges, the quality challenges, the variety challenges, and to be honest, to see which core assortments are really needed from the demand side. Because the one wholesalers are about, we are buying and we are selling. So we have to calculate what are we buying to sell it. And that's why calculation is so difficult, because of these huge amount of varieties. So we have to talk to our customers, the pharmacists. They have to talk to the demanding physicians and the patients. So to see which core assortment is really the assortment we can calculate with to finance it. And that's why this communication, education, and these modern forms of education communication are so crucial. And we need the specialized pharmacies. We still have pharmacies, they don't want to deal in this field. We have those pharmacies, they are going to deal with, but they are not specialized, and these are the ones who are the problems. And we have these represented by Christiane. They are really on the top, with experience and know-how, and this is really the fun we have in the business, and these are the pharmacists and pharmacies. We can connect with calculation issues and demand issues and see which varieties are really needed.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think to sit together and to listen where the obstacles are, because I know that a lot of cannabis companies, startups are sitting and I said, okay, first how to do it, how do I manage the entrance, how I build up the relationships, and at the end, how can I increase my presence in the market and have a market share. And I think to listen here and to understand what is the situation and how to deal with the stakeholders is a very important one. So I'm hearing you, Thomas, that you say, I want a partner who is preparing his homework, who is coming, who is a reliable supplier, who is intending to stay in the market, who is not interested in spot sales or offering every month another flower, and who is ready also to participate in the education of the customer. I hear you, Hannah, where you say, of course the situation is complicated, but if a company is making their homework, if they're innovative, if they have a vision for the future, then they can be a right partner for Medios, isn't it? And Timo, you say there are issues, but they can be overcome because they are experienced service provider in the market who can really help you. So go and ask for it. And hearing you in that way, I see also, of course, Christiane, that you wish for partners who understand that it is not a self-seller. And the ways sometimes in the market have been taken are now with a backdrafting on the situation. We all know the situation of obstacles which we are facing now with changes. Regulators have taken action, lawmakers have taken action. I would like to ask, if you see the situation, how many, or anybody in the room knows how many pharmaceutical companies went bankrupt the last 10 years? Does anybody know the number? Okay, 0, easy. How many cannabis companies have bankrupt the last 12 months? Yeah. Yeah, even more. So I think if I would be the one who go, okay, which path I will take, I think for me the decision would be clear. And in that way, we say the better is the enemy of the good. What would be the learning, Hannah, for what can a cannabis company learn from a pharmaceutical company?
Yeah, I guess two different things. whatever a cannabis company is about, right? I think because we also have to differentiate if they focus on the distribution part or on the growing part, or that's a big word. Also, a pharmaceutical company is a big word, right? But I think, speaking for Medios, something we have to learn is that this is a very promising industry, which came in a hype. We all hyped it. Right? And it was all about product, it was all about product margin. And here we are. This is why it fails. It's not about the product, it's about the system. And we have to set standards, and standards means that I think that cannabis is going to have the relevance it needs as soon as it integrates into the existing system. Because cannabis should also not, be treated differently and have its own system. It just has to integrate. So I think that, to answer your question, what can cannabis companies learn from pharmaceutical companies? Partner with us. If you have the right product, of course, and if you know what you're doing, and if you have a certain kind of vision, because I think there are always things a pharmaceutical company might not have. For example, very important in this world, we had that before, a doctor sales force. Not every pharmaceutical company is going out to doctors and educating them. So this would be something we would be really interested in. I think for the distribution part, Medios has around 1,500 pharmacies, connected pharmacies. We're very well set. But this part could be interesting. So I think it always is, it depends who you're talking to.
Timo, what would be your lesson learned?
I think for me personally, we all know it's a very early industry. We need to just accept that learning is part of development and maturing as an industry. It's normal. So I think sometimes it's important for us, all of us in the industry, to level set around that. It's normal but we need to continuously improve. But for me, at the end, for medical cannabis, we are cultivating a crop, and when cultivating a plant, you accept and you need to deal with variance. That is what you do in cultivation. But from a farmer perspective, there is no variance allowed. So, and this is where what is the mindset overall throughout the value chain is eliminate all variance, right? But it's the way to go from stabilizing genetics to clinical data. So we need to, for me personally, continue. I think for me personally, the trend is good. There is things to correct, sure, but let's also stick as an industry together and stay connected, even if there are disagreements or things to correct, to not give enough ammunition to roll back any kind of regulation we have, because we need more time to have more data and to professionalize. But at the end, eliminating all variance is for me what is really required at the end to be a pharmaceutical industry at the end.
Thomas, you are for such a long time in the industry, and you were in the generic industry, and you know that at the end the success has been driven a lot by Salesforce, and we know that Salesforce is expensive, for sure. But on the other side is a form of communication which gives the doctor the time to ask questions, etc. So I know that years ago, when it was about, for individual pharma companies, Salesforce became very expensive to cover Germany. So the solution was co-marketing, co-promotion, united forces to move forward. And astonishingly, both parties win. There was no cannibalizing effect. So is that something which might be an port to go and to support this kind of transfer of the benefits of the medicinal cannabis at decision makers like doctors and pharmacies, to cover that and to support at the end the business also of a pharmaceutical wholesale, because you are of course growing with the growing distribution of products?
I agree, Sita. I think it's needed, but we need experienced sales forces.
Yes.
We know about pharmaceutical company sales forces. There were experienced ones and there were other business-minded ones.
Yeah.
So we need, as I experience in the cannabis field, really this experienced people, colleagues. They are knowing about quality, the assortment, what is really needed, the demand, and the demand of suppliers, wholesalers, pharmacists, and the patients. And I think what in the panel before was said, that really there's a need of patience, of indications, and it's we have to distinguish it between the customer side and saying we're talking about patient needs. This is so important to say this experience and this know-how coming from the patient need and from the indication has to go through the whole supply chain up to the manufacturer. And that's why I think even these experience forces are needed on each side. And from the wholesale side, we need more knowledge about the need of supply capability and supply resilience, even from the manufacturer side, because there are a lot, I'm sorry to say, but cannabis providers on the supply side just thinking for a half year or the next year. But we need resilient supply chains, resilient varieties needed. And so you just need trust-building issues to wholesalers, pharmacies, and to the patients if the variety needed is really next year and in 2 years still on the market. And so I think these trust-building issues are very, very important because there are too much pop-ups and we need to really strengthen the needs and demands of every part of the supply chain, even of the wholesaler, because it's sometimes a bit hidden, and more focus on the patient needs.
Thank you. And I think this is a big problem because we know that in the industry we have a 10 to 12 years planning. We have, and I understand that this is of course an issue where you are cautious to establish relationships if you have not a sustainability. And I think it's sad that we will have to wait on the survival of the fittest to survive instead of, having a strategy in advance. Talking about strategy, and you are, Christiane, at the front door of the patient. You are the one who has to train the team to give a good advice to patient, to answer to all their questions. What would you wish from a cannabis company as a support for your work and to be the capable communicator of the benefit of a product, but also meeting the expectation of the patient?
Yes, at first, cannabis is a compounded medicine.
Yeah.
So we bear the whole
responsibility of course with you of the pharmacist. Yes, that's true.
And we get a certificate from the industry, and we have to rely on this certificate. So the certificate includes critical parameters, and so we have only to have a view on flowers and have to test this to test the identity. So we need more transparency in the certificates, especially for decontamination methods.
Yeah.
These methods, the most methods beyond the irradiation are not clear at, we can't see it at the certificates.
And I think you have also not the time at the end, every time for each flower to check the whole background information, to manage that and to be credible communicators.
Yes, and we need also that the industry is fully compliant with GACP and EU GMP.
Yeah.
We must trust that. Yes, and so hopefully we need full transparency from the industry. Yeah. That would be great, and also we need a consistent supply. Because patients are well adjusted to, for example, a flower. Yeah. And so we don't need one-hit wonder.
Yeah, and you don't want to change in the therapy
they have
permanently.
to change everything and new and adjust it to the new flower, and that's not helpful for us in the pharmacy.
So I think we have 4 minutes left.
Yes,
if you
just
want
barely.
to leave it for...
Let's hear it again for the panel. There's this guy in the blue shirt right there. I have a quick question. You say because patients maybe get used to a strain and then, they don't grow the strain anymore. Is it the strain or is it like the specific terpene profile? So they get used to maybe 20% THC with a hint of myrcene and some limonene or whatever like that.
I think here we are lacking the data because sometimes it's just, I think, the taste. They like the taste.
Yes.
This can be, of course, a part, but it's also, I think, about the condition, very individual condition of the patient, what is for him acceptable and how ill or how, what kind of indication at the end he's treated.
Makes sense to me. Go ahead.
Hi there, Fez here from Elevate Wellness. We do 2.0 manufacturing products, so naturally I'm interested to know what is the evolution of the regulatory framework around 2.0 products. So flower has challenges. You talked about variants within flowers, even within the same genetics. The dosage form control is hard. And then there's no guarantee when the patients get prescribed flower, they actually vaporize it, right? So considering all these formats and then the pharmaceutical positioning of cannabis as a medicine, how do you see the progress of the framework to enable prescribers to offer controlled dosage formats like gummies, capsules, and whatnot?
Great question. I think the great thing is we are developing more and more different product formats are developed, extracts and so on, and this is required because these different product formats have not only the potential that they are more stable, more clear, but also they have obviously different onset. They have a different possibility of treatment for different indications. So you have a bigger toolbox to apply for, so to prescribe as a doctor and then dispense through the pharmacy. So these Cannabis 2.0 products, as you said, are so required to have a bigger portfolio to serve different patient needs. So luckily more and more are coming. Definitely flower is the biggest product category by far, and it also will stay. But luckily, the investments have been done and are continuously done, so that more and more products will come on the market. Obviously, it's then also required that you have the right equipment to consume and so on. So it's always an ecosystem which needs to develop around it. And at the end, all ducks need to be in a row, kind of, right, to really penetrate then the market. But luckily, we are seeing that more and more formats are coming, and that is good for patients.
And I might add that please be aware that we are in a magistral preparation, which means whatever kind of dosage form you're thinking about, it has to be first manufactured here. So to think about, I don't know, gummies or whatever, if there's no tool in the pharmacy, will not fly. If you make it too complicated, it cannot fly because for an individual patient, nobody is purchasing an equipment for 3,000 euro for one prescription. So I think here's something you have to consider, that not only the responsibility lies with the pharmacist, but also the manufacturing steps. And this is not only identity testing, but for example, the pharmacists are very experienced in cancer patient, to establish this kind of products which are in the chemotherapy, which are mixed products, which all these issues. So this is why they are pharmacists. But before thinking about how to get to something is what would be the way, I think is very important, isn't it?
Yes, but I agree we need better dosage forms like inhalable extracts, but we also need the medical device for it. And this is, it's really difficult to get the right medical device for the extracts. The extracts are not the problem. We have inhalable extracts, but we have not a really good medical device for that. We need something like an asthma inhaler, for example. That would be great.
But this, of course, also a challenging manufacturing part because the medical device is not only must be 150% reliable, but is also a medical device to be registered. And I think Hannah is also here very aware that the one is to have a great idea, and the other one, of course, to have the regulatory framework, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're all...
I hate to cut you off. We are running way behind. I'm
gonna
sorry.
be quick.
The light's been flashing 0 for like a minute now.
I'm going to be quick. It's not about innovation. Again, it's about fitting into the existing system, right? Also from a regulatory perspective. So...
Thank you very much. And I'm sure, we'll have, let's hear it from the panel one more time. I'm sorry I couldn't get to you, man. But they'll be outside and ready to answer all your questions and hear your complaints. Maybe handshakes and hugs. Thank you again one more time for Sita Schubert, the rest of the panel. We'll take pictures and everything.